Good evening and welcome to Contemplating the Universe. I'm your host, Leslie Zehr. I'm glad you could join us. This evening, Pamela Wells is with me. Are you there, Pamela?
Yes, I am. Hi, Leslie. It's great to be here.
How are you?
I'm very good. I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk about the Goddess deck. It's been just a fabulous, creative venture for me for many years now. It's something I am so looking forward to talking to and answering any questions, asking any questions from the viewers.
Let me give you just a little bit of information about Pamela before we start talking about the deck. Pamela is the author and illustrator of a guidebook and card set entitled Affirmations for the Everyday Goddess, Spiritual Guidebook, and 22 Wisdom Cards for Contemplation and Prayer. She created the Affirmations for the Everyday Goddess deck in order to honor the feminine way of knowing through creativity and inner vision in partnership with the wisdom teachings from the world's many spiritual traditions. The Goddess deck will help you clarify life situations as well as provide you with visual and symbolic roadmaps for exploring the mysteries of your life's meaning and purpose. The Goddess deck was designed to guide, inspire, and empower you with more self-knowledge and clarity about what is meaningful to you within the framework of your own spiritual and religious beliefs. Pamela has worked as a commercial illustrator, graphics, and web designer for many years. In the emerging field of digital artwork, she has developed her own unique style of painting. Her artwork has been published in digital how-to publications, and she has written how-to digital articles for both local and national publications. After publication of the Goddess deck, she began working as a fine artist. Pamela also does archetypal sacred contract readings for people who need some assistance in working with the archetypes. And the way I was introduced to Pamela was a friend of mine, Marianne, in New York. She gave me the deck as a gift, and actually that was quite nice because I do read tarot, and I had stopped buying books and things on tarot because they were kind of repetitive. I didn't feel they went deep enough, actually. So this one really moved me. So it's been my companion since that time, and we do use the deck at our full moon gatherings. So those women who are listening from Cairo probably will recognize the cards, and this is an opportunity for you to get a little more information about the deck itself, because we have Pamela here to speak to us. And I do want to say that mainly tonight we're going to be talking about the cards. Pamela did publish the deck herself. She's the publisher. There's a lot of information on her website about that whole process of publishing the deck. So people who are interested, we're not really going to talk about that tonight, but people who are interested in that self-publishing aspect of the cards can look at her website, which I'll give you at the end. There's a lot of information, good information about self-publishing. So if you're interested in that, then please check out her website and see. She has a lot of advice to offer you. Okay, so the cards, the deck. So what inspired you to create this deck? Where did your inspiration come from?
Well, you were saying earlier, and I loved hearing this, about you being moved and finding a deeper meaning in these cards, unlike some of the cards that you had previously experienced or had been out there in the commercial market. For me, this was process. This was my own journey, my own inner calling, my own adventure of a lifetime. I'm not sure how many of your listeners and viewers are familiar with each of these cards, but the cards, just to give a little background, actually have a storyline, a plot line. They're about the journey of life. And so when you start at the Zero Fool card, you go through all of these cards to up to 21. They will all within your lifetime at some point. So maybe these events or parts of your life that come up that are challenges may not happen in the particular order of the deck, but we all will go through them at some point. And so interestingly for me, the first card I designed and created, it just was a vision behind my eyes where I felt compelled as a commercial artist. It was something that I wanted to express and explain and talk about. And at that particular time, since I was a commercial artist, it didn't make any sense. That first card was a strength card. And for those of you that don't have a deck, that is card number 8 out of 21. So if we were to take a typical, and just say this is a standard timeline of process of our consciousness, how we evolve our consciousness, 8 is a wonderful card for my particular process because the card before it's a chariot, which means individuation. That was happening right before I decided I am going to have some faith and take this leap into this unknown, mysterious part of myself and honor the vision I have behind my eyes. Right before that, the chariot, individuation, is when we ask ourselves, do the things that our culture taught us, that people have told us, the things that I have learned, do they make sense for me? Do they lay a groundwork for the type of interest that I have? Does my heart sing? Do the things, is my life, is the creation of my life supporting me in a way that I feel vibrant and happy and healthy? And at that point in my life, I had been really questioning, is it possible to become an artist? And I had that stereotypical struggling artists don't survive. That was my background. That was my history. That's what I was taught in my particular background. And at the point of the chariot, I was questioning that. I was actually asking myself, is this really true? And went ahead and decided, I need to create something new for myself. I need to find out and take that chance to have some faith here and see where this inside world can take me and put it out there. So that's how I came about. And that card led to all the others, because then it was like I had opened this window into my soul that was just, it wouldn't stop. The imagery just would not stop. So
once you open the door.
Yeah.
Not so easy
what
to
a way
close
to start.
again. How did you get into that, working with the archetypes? Or is that the work you do with sacred contracts? Had you already worked with the archetypes, or what? What took you to that? Okay.
No, I mean, this is what's so. This is why this journey is. These cards. It wasn't a planned, or I had no training. I had no artistic training at the time. I had no formal studies in tarot or any of that. And in actuality, when I had created many of the cards that say half the deck, the imagery that I was creating, I didn't connect it to tarot at all. It was just coming forth.
So it really wasn't inspired. Yeah.
No, not at all. I was just following this part inside of me that was saying, bring this forth, put this on paper. This is what I see. And I also had a group outside of me, a commercial professional organization, illustrator, saying to me, paint what you love, draw what you love. And I kept saying back to them, but how am I going to make a living doing this? And they said, but your work, the work you're doing, the technical work, the illustrations, they're great, but these are other people's visions. And we can't feel it. We can't see where the juice is, the vibrancy. It's wonderful work if you want to put it in a magazine or a book. It has its place. But they were pushing me to a certain degree to say, let's see what you love. Let's see what comes forth beyond what you've already done in the commercial field. And this is what was coming forth. And then I was willing to get on board and say, I'm going to honor this and do it.
Yeah.
Even if
because then it has some
important.
integrity. I mean, I think that's the thing with art. From what I see with artwork, is when it does come from that deeper place, it really does come across. You know, you can tell what someone is passionate about, or that they've drawn something with passion as opposed to something very mechanical, like you're saying.
Yeah. So I halfway through the process, a publisher saw some of the work, and it was a very large alternative publisher. And they contacted me, and that's where I got the idea. Oh my goodness, he is interested in this becoming a tarot deck. Gosh, why didn't I think of that? And
yeah,
then
but maybe it would have stopped you too.
You know,
if you had seen the structure from the beginning, maybe it would have been limiting as opposed to this being expansive, just because there were no limits. You didn't know what it was. It was just a vision.
That's right. That's right. It was just this mysterious place of honoring my creativity and letting it go where it would. And I love that story is actually, that's what I teach now, is I encourage people to honor their vision, honor their creativity, honor their life process. And that is part of what these cards do, because they give us some clarity. When we use divination tools, they give us clarity into what is true for us and also universal truths. So they're great tools. They're a great place to start for those who are uninitiated, not sure how to go about talking to Source or directly contacting Spirit, is to start with some form of divination tool.
So then you went and studied these archetypes after that? The illustrations came first, and then...
Absolutely. Oh, my goodness, did I have to study. Because then it became, there are certain parameters that Tarot has historically had certain imagery, certain symbolism that archetypally goes back very far in humanity, in our history. And so I started to actually study and become more familiar with those archetypes, and I incorporated the ones that I resonated with the most. So it was a mix and a match. I didn't stick with a lot of what has been done before in Tarot, and a lot of Tarot deck creators actually do that. They sometimes go in very, very unusual places with their archetypal and symbolic imagery. I sort of hit a midway, I think a pretty comfortable place where there's a familiarity, but also there's some fresh, original, and new material that I brought in for myself that resonated for me, that I felt, well, if it resonates for me, it'll probably resonate for others. For instance, the feminine aspects of this deck, at this particular time in history, I think it is absolutely important, and is becoming a part of a global consciousness that we so much need to honor and empower and bring forth the feminine aspects of beingness. So for me, this deck, it was just everything I envisioned, everything that came up for me was the feminine. And it kept repeating itself, and I couldn't even bring up the masculine in this card because it was a pattern for me of exploring what is the feminine and going deeper into that, because I wasn't taught about the feminine aspects of life.
Why don't you explain what that means to you? What's your concept of the divine feminine?
Well, the divine feminine is an aspect of ourselves, and we all have masculine and feminine aspects of ourselves. And most of us, and probably most of the listeners and viewers, are most familiar with a male, structured, culturally based society. And what's left out are the important aspects, the just as important aspects of the feminine. And those would include things, I'm going to say some key words here, but I'll go a little deeper, would include things like being able to see behind your eyes, the intuitive world, mystery, the cosmic womb, universal knowledge, wisdom, paradox, self-nourishment, receiving, surrendering. All those key words have been pathologized in our cultures and for such a long time that it's really, the feminine is all of us, men and women, remembering those repressed, denied inner parts and aspects of ourselves, the self-nourishing ourselves, taking time out to listen to what comes from within, the inner voice, or taking time to see other worlds that aren't necessarily in front of our eyes. So for me, the feminine is this mystery of the self and the mystery around us. And instead of having a concrete masculine viewpoint of, we got this figured out, here's the science, we know what this is, we can break all these pieces apart and study the parts of it and get to know it, and that's it. That's what it is. Where the feminine would look at that and say, well, wait a minute. The parts make up the whole. This is what we see isn't always necessarily what it is. And the feminine allows us to keep looking, to keep looking, to keep looking. And the deeper and the more we look, the more we realize how little we actually knew about something that we thought we took apart and studied and scientifically had a fact about it. So when you put the masculine and the feminine together, it's a paradoxical way of being in the world, there's a certain tension to it, but it allows one to be in a much wholer, healthier place, to honor both ways of being within ourselves. And when we find that nice balance, it's what we see in ourselves and how we look out in the world, we can find ways to be in a more balanced, healthy place. So that was my own journey, was to actually become more integrated in my feminine, because I was a much more aspected towards masculine viewpoints. So
well, I think that's what we're taught, and I think that what you're saying is important, that just bringing that language and reintegrating those aspects that you just mentioned back into our vocabulary and to our consciousness of things that are important. I think that that's a big part of it, is just remembering, bringing those pieces back together, because she has been forgotten and lost somewhere along the line. And I don't think it's about it dominating or anything dominating. It's about just being familiar with these things and making them a part of what we are in our totality.
Yeah, and it's just as important for men to do this within themselves as well, and find that inner goddess, the inner feminine, and for women to find their inner masculine self, to work through that, to look at it, to balance that. So just to give an example, for instance, if you're a masculine female, you may tend to be very linear focused, goal-oriented, maybe even a little controlling, trying to get things to go your way as you have them listed on your list, whereas integrating the feminine within yourself, this allows you to sit and listen more, put the list away, allow some synchronicity to happen in your life, bring the list back out, check, okay, this didn't happen when I needed it to, but that's okay. I can work this. This is working better this way, actually. And to give one some opening to life's inconveniences it may seem from that masculine linear viewpoint. From a feminine viewpoint, it would be synchronistic. It would be an opportunity or a challenge, because the challenge builds our inner strength. Just to give another example, let's say a man who has too much feminine yin and maybe not enough masculine yang. So maybe he's going through life and he's got more chaos. He's forgetting his appointments. He's walking into his home, and he's got his clothes all over the floor. And having a more focused masculine, integrated masculine, yeah, maybe you need to look at getting for your iPhone an app calendar appointment and setting the time, even though this may not be his natural state, how he was brought up, how he is in the world. But in order to be in the world in a way that is healthy and balanced, it would be helpful to have the app and to show up at the appointment sometimes, so you have this life that moves along smoothly instead of having to go back and repair relationships because you missed your appointment. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really great to have the awareness, and there's nothing wrong with being more of a masculine female or more of a feminine male. It's lovely. And it's fabulous when we can go, oh yeah, I'm a little too yin. I don't always, make decisions when they need to be made because someone, got a timeline here and I really would be useful for my work. We can correct a little bit, and once we do, we find, oh, this is a good place to be because things open up. They flow more smoothly. And we feel better about our lives. We don't feel as harried and stressed. And so I encourage everybody to find this nice balance. Know who you are, know what you're aspected for, and then look at how you can challenge yourself to work on strengthening the muscle, like bodybuilding, your masculine or feminine aspects that aren't as whole within you, that are still broken into parts, that are integrated. So,
and coming to your own full potential, even if that doesn't, like you were saying, if that's not in the usual definition of what that might be, that's what you are. And yes, there's a certain amount of that you can work with.
Yeah, and well, the other thing I do too is with the tarot, I also have, this is a wonderful divination tool, but I also do something called sacred contracts. And it's another tool. It's not necessarily a divination tool as much as a tool of self-knowledge, of self-knowing. And this is another aspect of the more we know ourselves, the more we can define and live in a world that is perfect for us, that works perfectly for what we want to create, what we want to do in the world. And so each of the archetypes in a sacred contract house, just like the archetypes in the tarot, have a symbolic energy and essence for us. It's like we're patterned for a particular prototype of beingness in the world. For instance, everybody knows what a mother is. If you say to someone, oh, she's such a mother, we instantly know what that means. That archetypal energy that person carries is mother, means nourishing, protective, very, very diligent, taken care of. This would be a wonderful archetype for someone, of course, who has children, but you don't necessarily have to have the mother archetype to have children. But if you know you have it, then you know that throughout your life, it will be very important to be the mother in your life situations, to take care of, whether it's being of service to people and organizations and mothering them there, or being a mother of children, or being a mother of animal children, like in a rescue situation. It's a very important archetype to be expressed within your own life contract. And so we all have, all archetypes, of course, but we all have these particular archetypes that we express that are stronger within us. It's part of our birth blueprint. And when we know what those 12 main archetypes are, then it makes us much more aware and conscious of what is perfect for us and how to live our life with the most abundance, because we make better choices when we can look and see, oh, I've got the mother archetype. It's going to be very important for me in this lifetime to be able to take care of, to nourish, to look after, to be part of someone else's or something else's or a cause, to be of service in a way that's nurturing and mothering, that will be a very important part of your life in order to really feel fitted into who you are in this lifetime. It's great if you know that and you can honor it. So that's why
I think it's interesting how much that people don't know what they are. I mean, I think it's often easier for us to see it in other people than it is for people to see it in themselves.
Yeah, we all have a blind spot, and it is very difficult to know. And so we have messengers throughout our lives where the truth does come through the messengers, or we need to go out and, like in my case, you know, being an artist was something I had said, no, I'm not going to be an artist. Even though inside of myself I knew all the way through my entire life, you are an artist. But I didn't want to be an artist because I was so afraid of that archetype. And so sometimes you just need to say, I'm going to try this on. I'm going to give this and I'm going to really question what I've been told and taught. So we all have our journey and how we get there, but eventually we're going to remember everything. I mean, it's like we're born, we're into this lifetime, we're these perfect, happy beings, we're reprogrammed to forget, which it sounds so, why is this set up like that? You know, why do we have to go through this and then spend the rest of our lives remembering and reconnecting with Source, Divine, of the being that we are, who we are is the one divine. Why do we have to do this? And the simplest answer I can come up with is that Source cannot see itself. So that very point that you made earlier about, well, we can't see the blind spots. I didn't know I had this gift, and sometimes we genuinely, it wasn't brought forth at this particular point in our life, and it comes up some later point, but it will come up. At some point, someone or something will happen, and your mother archetype is going to come forth and say, here I am, you're a mama, claim me. And if you don't step into that part, and like what I did, which is denial, push away, it's hard because you're not in your own skin. You're not settled in what your gifts are, so you cannot bring forth the abundance and the all the wonderful things that open up for you once you do say, yes, that's my gift, I claim it, I honor it, I'm going to do it. You know?
Probably that's a kind of like flexing the muscles or toning the muscles, in that it's a bit of a challenge maybe to get there, but maybe it is the resistance and the challenge that tones you in some way to prepare you for whatever, or to make you really want it or something. There must be that resistance must create some kind of something that's useful.
Kind of reminds me of, well, you know, we have this really big archetype. Actually, everybody has this archetype, but it's a victim archetype. There's many lessons to be learned when we're on the shadow side of our victim archetype. And, for instance, I'll just take one. The lesson for the victim archetype for one particular life may be self-empowerment. Another person's lesson of being victim will be forgiveness. And so it's that the world's push, we're saying, oh, I'm a victim. This is always happening to me. Every time I do X, Y, Z, it doesn't work out. But as soon as we say, okay, I'm not a victim, I have choice, I have responsibility, how will I go about this? Then you learn the lesson, because then you change the whole dynamic, and you no longer attract masters or and be their slave. You no longer attract tyrants, petty tyrants who come into your life and boss you around and shame you. It's when we finally look at the shadow aspects of that archetype, and let's say the victim archetype we all have and we all have to work with, then we realize this is really about self-empowerment, forgiveness, and who am I in this world? How do I want to be in this world to be the highest, strongest, most abundant person that I can be, because I am the divine. So it's it's the lessons, the pushing back sometimes. That's what we need in order to get to the higher place of consciousness.
Well, that's that critical mass, I think, that you have to just put so much into it, and then you do burst out in some way or have that shift. So, yeah, it keeps coming to us until we get enough, I guess.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be in the most difficult and challenging ways. And it can be like the dark night of the soul, which in the goddess deck is the Tower card, where everything is falling apart. You're in great pain and suffering. You feel like you've lost all faith. You're feeling hopeless and helpless. And it is in that dark moment where once you burn through the anger and the grief and the anger and the grief, and you just keep going through it, and you're thinking, I can't go any further. I can't get any worse. And that dark night of the soul is often the very thing you need to see the light, to have that aha, to surrender, to release what you thought it was supposed to be, how it was supposed to be, what your life was supposed to be like. Sometimes those are the moments when you go, I'm going to reclaim my life. I'm going to call my spirit back. I'm going to start integrating and incorporating what is really true for me. So, we all go through little dark nights of the soul, if that's possible, and it doesn't feel that way often, and then we all go through, oftentimes it can be 1 or 2 times in a lifetime we go through these
I was going to say, I think
horrible
we
moments.
need to redefine that as the dark nights of the soul. There seem to be more and more as time goes on.
Exactly. But I always tell everybody that underneath all of that is love. It's like you can't go down any further. You're going to end up with love because God is love. So it's like, it's hard to tell someone that when they're going through that. Like, yeah, it's just all about love. You're learning something here. They don't want to hear that, but it's...
once it's happened to you, you know that.
Yes.
And when it happens again, it's a little bit easier, not necessarily to go through it, but to know that on the other side of that is something really wonderful.
Exactly.
Now that we seem to be having so many of them.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And right now we seem to be going through a lot of transformation in terms of death and rebirth. And that was actually one of the cards that you had indicated that you were going to pull today. And that's the one, right, that you pulled, one of the cards that you pulled.
Yes, it is.
To get a little theme going here for the conversation.
Well, let's leave that for just a moment, though. I want you to, just for people who are not familiar with working with cards and that sort of thing, how would you explain or define the archetypes? Maybe you can just give a little how you would explain them for people who are not familiar with them, who haven't worked with them before. Right.
So archetypes are patterns of energy that are patterns of energetic meaning. Here's a good metaphor for those who aren't really grasping it. Would be, for instance, in an atom, we have the electrons, and the patterns of the electrons, they actually do clump up, and they have a certain sequence that starts to coagulate and gives us an indication of what the atom is talking about, what is part of. So if an atom is a part of wood, it will give the definition, the pattern of wood, the way the electrons circulate within the atom. And so I try to tie that to archetypes. They're patterns of energy, of meaning. So what tends to happen is if you have the, let's say, king archetype, you're going to tend to pattern towards more masculine, fatherly, more of a leadership. There will be more of a leadership aspect to who you are. And so of the cards within the deck are taking some of the largest, most important, historically key patterns within our consciousness for the last, let's say, 2,000 years, that people throughout in any country will understand all of these archetypes. There's no cultural difference with these big, in the major arcana of the tarot. For those of you who are familiar with the major and the minor arcana, the reason I did the deck with just the majors is because they are the most powerful, most potent energy patterns, archetypal patterns that we can talk about right now in history. So we've got 22 of them in this deck.
That's a lot to work with.
Yeah, it is.
And how do you feel that working with the archetypes is useful? What about it can they teach us? What's your feeling about this? How they're useful to us on our journey?
Yeah, well, for the tarot, how they can be very useful is they give us a very quick peek at what is going on inside of us and what's going on around us. Because what we're really doing when we pick a card or choose a card or do for people who are very familiar with the tarot, who know a lot, they'll actually do a spread. They'll put out 8 cards or 4 cards. One of the reasons I made this deck the way it is and just stuck to the 22 is because I wanted it to be simple. I wanted anybody and everybody, whether you're a layperson or actually use the tarot all the time and are very familiar with spreads with multiple cards, that if you wanted a simple, clear answer, you could just pull a card. And that archetypal energy, that pattern of that card, would give you some insight into the particular problem, challenge, situation that you wanted to know about. That's what we do, is I encourage everybody to keep it as simple as possible unless you're aspiring to do a great deal more or want to do readings for people. But most of the people that I'm talking to and wanted to reach were people like me who had no background in tarot, that simply wanted some clarity on an issue where you feel so much inside incongruence and you feel so gray and fuzzy and the clouds won't lift and you really are just on the spot of what's the answer, what should I do in this particular situation? So I suggest in the book that people ask, hey, what do I need to know about questions? So I think that's the most important question, simplest question you could ask is, what do I need to know about, and then fill in the blank. What do I need to know about my job situation? And I also put a timeline on it to say now or in 5 months from now or whatever. What do I need to know about?
Yeah, and I think that's important. Yeah. I mean, to me, the best question is, what do I need to know now? Because you may want to know about your job, but until you solve some other problems that are coming before that or influencing that, you can't necessarily solve the next problem.
Right.
And to me, the tarot in general is good for that. For giving you clarity just on where you are. You can't move forward until you know where you are.
Yeah. I think that's why divination tools can be so helpful. I also like to tell people with a caveat, for those who really need the clarity, want more consciousness, really, really enjoy using the cards, I also encourage them, develop this ability directly with source energy. You don't need the cards. You don't need the divination tools. You can put them all away in a box at some point when you feel like you can sit down, still yourself, and ask, what do I need to know directly to source, and get the answer that way. But this is a great transitional tool. I sometimes even use the cards for myself when and usually I sit down and I ask, what do I need to know? And I work with my inner visions, my guides, my auditory, whatever it is to get the answer, because it's there. I just don't want to listen to it, I don't want to hear it, whatever. But once in a while, I will actually go to the cards when I've got a complete fog in my head, and I'm just like, I cannot figure this out.
But I think
And
it's
then
good to
I'll
have
pull a card.
something outside of yourself, too. I mean, to me, that's what's nice about cards is you pull one and you're looking at it. And when things are in your head, maybe you have too much information. You know, it's not that you're not getting any information. It's that you're getting so much that you can't quite sort it out. But by having something external. And I think you really accomplished that with this deck, because I do read tarot and astrology, and people will start and they say, well, I don't know what that is. I don't know. Yeah, there are the cards. I don't know what they mean. Well, just stop. You don't need to know as much as you think you need to know.
Yeah.
Look at the picture or just feel it. Or in that way, these cards, I think you've really accomplished that in that you've created something visual, and you've given them the book, but to make it in a very simple way, like pulling one card every day or whenever you have a question or whatever. I think that makes it doable, that people can access this energy, this important, as you said, potent energy of the archetypes in a very simple way. I think you did accomplish that. And as I said, we have a lot of, we do this on the full moon, and I think it is, even if people can't sit and read the whole book about whatever the archetype that they've pulled, just to read the affirmation or something already gives you a clue. And I think that what we were talking about earlier, that we can't see ourselves, I think that's also these are a good way to do that, because you can pull something and then you can see it, and I'm sure that once you read the definition that it would begin to resonate with you, but a lot of people just don't know where to look. So I think this is a really this in particular, your deck is a really good way to access that information.
Yeah, and even the book, the copy in the book, there's so much condensed into one little chapter that I do encourage people to read it, and something will jump out at you when you're looking at the meaning of the card. It will jump out at you, and that will be something that you can affirm, look at, turn over your mind, connect the dots with, bring it back to the imagery in the card, and so on. They work together very well as well. But any way anybody wants to use these cards, I think it's perfect, because your intuitive mind will know exactly what to do.
Yeah, and you've given people a lot of options. And also, I agree with reading it and what will jump out, but encourage people to read it every time, because, again, at our gatherings, a lot of times there are women who keep pulling the same card. I've had this one before. Well, read it again, because each time, usually something different jumps out at you, and even things you never saw before, or I never read that before. Well, obviously it's always been there because you didn't reprint the book. Yeah. It's important, I think, if you do keep getting it again, to go back and keep rereading it, because there is a lot of information. It's only a few pages, but there's a lot of information in there, and it does change as you change. So I think it's important to keep going back and keep looking at it again, especially if it keeps coming back to you. Then perhaps what you really needed to see, you didn't see yet. So go back and read it. Yeah.
There's all those layers. I also, I don't know if this is in the book or not, but sometimes what I'll do for myself is I'll pull a card, and then I'll pull another card if I want a little bit more depth to complete or to round off or to give me a little additional clarity to the card. But that's about as far as I personally go. But I would be really interested if there's people that actually do spreads, or they've got some other method that resonates for them, that works for them. But I always say keep it simple, stupid, like in recovery programs. I think that was just brilliant, because like you were saying earlier too, we have so much of the intuitive knowledge already. It's all there. It just needs to be reminded and remembered.
And focused. I think that's, to me, what happens when you pull a card is there. That's the one I need to see. Yes, I have all of these archetypes in me, probably to some degree, but this is the one that I need to be focused on or understand or work with. or whatever. So I do think that we're just bombarded with too much stuff these days, and so things that can focus our attention are important. And like you were saying, you know, with the feminine, just to look at a picture and have it work on the right side of your brain in that sort of subliminal or unconscious place, to, even if you don't read the book, just looking at the card and taking it all in symbolically, I think is important. So that would be another way to use it, is just, how does this feel, or you know, what does that picture evoke in me? So there are many ways to access that information, and probably it's good to try them all and see what works for you, or to try different ways. I haven't actually done that, just sitting and looking at it, but maybe I'll try that. It came to me for a reason, so I guess.
Well, I've been looking at them for a while. I looked at them for a very long time as I was drawing them, and they always came up when I needed them, and I was working on my life when I was drawing the drawing that I needed to work on. So that's kind of how they worked for me, you know.
But that's such a gift, and you lived the process. I mean, I think I didn't know that that's how this had happened for you, and I think that's very cool that you just tapped into that, Yes,
I've been dragged along by the archetypes of the artist. It's just dragging me along here through my life. You're going to be an artist. You are destined to be an artist. So here I am, and I love it. This is wonderful, wonderful to be able to share what I have inside. And my way of saying it is, this is better than talking, is to actually, for me, is to put it in a visual language, because it is the primordial way of communicating to one another is through the visual. And we understand that in parts of our brain that we don't exercise very often. So that is the power of art, you know. Yeah. And the colors and the vibrancy and the rhythms, the shapes, the flow, the movement, all of this is just working on some deeper level of our brains that is really healing and natural, and just like music, it just floats over you, and you don't have to sit there and explain why it's so good and why it feels good and why it works. You simply become part of that. So, yeah.
No, I agree with you, and I feel that way about art, but I don't have, it's very frustrating for me because I don't have the skill. It doesn't come through my hands. I can visualize things, but I can't get them from my head onto a piece of paper. So I really appreciate people who can do that, because I think that really is a gift, to be able to manifest it somehow, bring whatever's in there, to be able to bring it out. So we had decided that we would pull a few cards and then maybe just talk about them and go through the process a little bit, just to kind of give people an example of what you can do with these cards. When I pulled a card this morning, I pulled a card, and then two other ones jumped out. So I said, okay, those are the ones that we need to do tonight. So I think we'll focus on those. And the two cards that I pulled were the Death card and the Moon. From the book, I think I'll just read the keyword and the affirmation, and then maybe you can say what you would like to say. So for Death, and I have the slide of the card itself, so if you can read it, you'll be able to read it. Anyway, the keyword, I like keywords. I use keywords and everything, because you got to anchor it with something, and that's a very good way to do it. So the keyword here is surrender. And the affirmation, I surrender my ego and no longer let fear rule my life. I have love, faith, and hope. And this is actually a theme that has come up a lot at our gatherings. And with Saturn in Scorpio, it's definitely a time where this is a theme that keeps coming up. So when this card jumped out, I felt that was really appropriate, because I think it is an appropriate card for this time. So maybe you want to talk just a little bit about the archetype itself.
Sure. This is I love this card because it is love, faith, and hope. And love and faith To me, that is the divine. That is our practice, is to come into our daily lives when we wake up and have love, faith, and hope. And that is a feminine place to be, with heart, the mind, the body, and to begin every day with sending love out or breathing it out, and then inhaling love, breathing it out, giving it away. Inhaling in, taking it in, it's all around us, abundance, magnificence, and then breathing it out and being the love in our lives and remembering throughout the day, I am love, I am love, this is love, love is all around me, and to manifest the focus there. So that's how I like to think about the death card, because when we see the death card, we immediately go, oh gosh, that's awful,
yeah.
Something died. There's a lot of fear associated with death, and from the feminine aspect, death is just the beginning of the rebirth process, and so there's no end. It's just a constant circular revolving like the DNA. It's just a constant swirling of essence of us being here and loving, living. There's no death for real. It's just all an illusion in our mind. So but that's another conversation.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think it's the dark side of the feminine. I mean, there's usually a light and a dark goddess, and the dark one is about death, and as much as the feminine, I think, has been taken out of our vocabulary and our consciousness, I think death has as well. It became so fearful that people don't want to think about it, but when you think about, you can't have a state of constant growth, because that's cancer. Right. That's what cancer does, is it just keeps growing and growing. There has to be that death aspect. And I liked what you said about letting go, because I hadn't thought about that before, but yes, letting go of love is sending it out, to perceive letting go in that positive aspect, that by letting go of love, you're actually sending it out to everything around you. I think that's a really nice way to look at that concept of letting go.
Yeah, and it's a deepening. The death card is a deepening, an appreciation, and a deepening of that life force energy. Because if you can't see the contrast, if you can't see the contrast in your life, then there's stagnation, and the movement stops. And we don't grow, we stagnate. So it's important to embrace and honor that death as the new rebirth, the new life comes forth after the death.
And it creates the matter, or the substance of what we create life out of. So there has to be that death aspect in order to give us the prima materia, in order to start the next part of the cycle. Yes, absolutely. It's all important to honor all the aspects, light, shadow, any way we want to describe them, that polarity, the duality, finding that place in the middle to honor them both, that paradox. It's intense, but that is a wonderful place to reside. And by the way, that intensity, the paradox, for real geeks, tarot geeks, would be the temperance card. So if you want to know about paradox, study the temperance card. Bridging the worlds, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And so just for those people who haven't actually used these cards, I'm going to tell you, I read the keyword and the affirmation, and Pamela explained about the archetype. And then she also has some poems in here. And then at the end, she has questions. And to me, these questions are wonderful, because I think that questions are always a way to make it personal to you, and to allow you to go through your own process of sort of trying those archetypes on for size, just to see how they actually do relate to your own life. So these contemplative questions at the end, I think, are make it very easy to use. And then some of them have an exercise or a visualization. And then you also have a question. And the question for this one is, may I let go of all fear and have faith?
Yeah.
So that's the question that you ask the divine. Do you want to talk about these questions at all that you have in here? Or, I mean, I don't know how deeply you want to go into this or whether we should go on to the next one.
No, I think we should go to the next one, but I just wanted to mention that there is a wisdom card prayer guide, and those are also another, it's a question in another form. So you can also affirm or contemplate the particular, go through the prayer guide and look at that. And for instance, the death card in this wisdom card prayer guide, let me see if I can find it here. You know what I'm talking about.
Isn't that what I just read?
Leslie? Oh, did you just read that? I thought you were reading it from
sorry, I just lost it.
Oh, yeah, you did. No, you
okay.
did.
I'm just
okay.
wondering if it's different. That's why that was a question. I wasn't sure if it was the same thing or not.
No, this is, okay, so we are talking about the Wisdom Card Prayer Guide. Oh, I see it. My vision is going, so I can't read this little type.
No, and actually in the booklet, I only realized that that's in there today. At the very end of each one, there, that the question is actually there, or the prayer guide, or however you want to put that.
I find them to be very helpful. It's just another way of affirming in your mind the particular lesson. That's what it is. It's just another way of learning.
So the other card that I pulled is the Moon card. Let me find that card.
I have it as I use my intuition and intelligence to guide me at all times.
And the key word is right use of spiritual knowledge and discernment. Well, this is very fitting.
And
I've had that conversation
about
recently with so many people.
Did you?
Yeah, the difference between judgment, like judging people, and being discerning. And I think there's a very important distinction between those two. Yeah. And this concept of the right use of spiritual knowledge, I think, is also something that's very prevalent at this point in time. With all the misinformation and all the manipulation that seems to be going on around the world.
Yeah. This, the intuition, when I look at this, is the intuition is, like we were talking about this earlier too, is feminine intelligence, and then we have the cognitive or rational, logical, masculine intelligence. Putting these two together, the two different types of intelligence and way of thinking and how humans process information is with these two types of intelligence. And since we've sort of regulated intuitive intelligence to the sidelines and not made it as important as it is, it deserves equal attention and knowledge and focus for all beings to feel wholeness, is to have both in balance. The masculine intelligence and the feminine intelligence in balance. So that's what this card is. And in the progression of the cards, if you were to look at them as a timeline, which is convenient, but that's not usually how it works, it's 18. And so we're only 3 cards away from the one, the union, the spirit, or like people like to say, it's enlightenment. Seeing the one instead of the duality of life. This card is so important because it's really saying this is the unification of your knowledge and the unification of logic and intuition. Intuitive knowledge becomes wisdom because we are spiritual beings in human bodies. So it's really important that we merge the two parts of ourselves together into the one, to be grounded on earth and have our self also open to the heavens and the cosmic source of all knowledge at all times, and to use both of them equally. Because, of course, we've got to get up and we've got to stir the oatmeal, serve it up to our kids, get out, go to work, and this is the day-to-day contentment and where we are in the world, balanced with we're spiritual beings and everything we do, even when we're sitting there stirring the oatmeal for the kids, and having this really nice place in our lives to honor both types of intelligence within us that we have access to at all times.
Yeah, and how much fuller would life be if we did integrate those two things in everything that we do? And we have it. It's a gift that we have them both. So yes, I think that it may be challenging, especially at this point in time, because we haven't necessarily been taught to use that more subtle realm, but it's time.
Yeah, and it's time, and that's what the cards are here for, and that's why they came through me, is because it was time in my own life to find that balance and to bring it forth, to make that part of my life, that balance of intuition, intelligence. And when I look at the cards, I say, this is my feminine, intuitive self being given a platform, an opportunity to speak, to have a say in my life. And even though it's happening inside of me all the time, whether I know it or not, it's really good to have a tool like this to provide the clarity of the intuitive wisdom, knowledge that's always there at all times. So that, I think that's just the perfect way to describe the cards, is this is our intuitive source tool for all of us to use in a simple way.
And let me just read the prayer. Please give me guidance on how to safely explore the mystery of God. So that's for the moon, that's the prayer or the question at the end. Well, we've been speaking for about an hour. Is there anything else you'd want to add to either of those cards that we didn't touch on, or any of the cards that we didn't touch on that you want to say in closing?
I think this was perfect, the moon card, because we're exploring the mystery, and this is one of the ways we can explore our own inner mystery. And I think that's a perfect way to close. I'm just so delighted to have had the opportunity to speak with you today and all your listeners and viewers. You know, I welcome all questions and anything that they would like to ask of me. I'm welcome and happy to spend some time answering their questions and an email. I'm online. I'm easy to find.
So if you want to get in touch with Pamela, her website is everydaygoddessart.com. If you're interested in the publishing aspects, there's a lot of information on there about that. I believe you have a link there also for the sacred contract readings that you do.
Yep,
so if anyone's on your website, yes?
Yep,
if anyone's interested in that.
Mm-hmm. And they can, probably the easiest way to get a deck of cards is to go to one of the big online publishers like Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And that's probably the most direct way. They are at alternative retail stores. So you could always take a look at or call your local New Age retailer.
Yeah, and they're on my website as well. There's a bookstore on my website, and the cards are in that bookstore. So if you want to order them online, you can do that as well.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
Thank you for talking to us about this. It was nice to talk to you about this. As I said, I've used the cards, and we use them at the gatherings. So it's nice to actually be able to talk to you about them. For anyone who wants to get in touch with Pamela, her website, and you can connect to her from that. If you need to get in touch with me, my website, universaldancer.com. Also, the webinars are on there, or you email me at mail@universaldancer.com. So thank you, Pamela. It's been lovely to talk and to go deeper into these cards, these particular cards that I pulled. See, I got my own personal...
I really,
my
really
own personal interpretation about that. Yeah,
you're a deep sea diver, and I so much appreciate that you're bringing so much meaning, direction to other women's lives. It's just fantastic. And thank you for this opportunity, and God is blessed.
Thank you. I hope that we'll see you here again, listening to our up-and-coming speakers. Good night to those of you who are having nighttime, and have a great day to those of you who are just beginning their day. Thank you. Thank you for listening.